Thanks for joining us. Wednesday edition of the show, Papa and Lund. We appreciate you hanging out. YouTube and Twitch, you can see our bright, shiny faces. For example, you would know what we were talking about if you saw Papa's wardrobe change. He's got the Niners hat and sweatshirt on right now, which tells you that we're going to talk to David Lombardi of The Athletic, at Lombardi himself. And one of the fun things to do in the offseason is their spreadsheet that he and Matt Barrows put together. It is one of the most fun things you can do because you can be the GM. You can spend the money and all those kind of things. And David joins us courtesy of the UMA guest line. What's happening?
Not much. Just got out of the pool, doing a little bit of swimming.
Nice.
Yeah.
You swim every single day, don't you? Every day.
Yeah, but this time of the year, I'm not in the Bay Area. Here, I got a palate cleansing for about a month,
Nice.
and I get to actually swim in a. Yeah. And there's one place here that has a pool open outdoors year round, and so I signed up to be a member there. They heat it year round.
Oh, nice.
And so it's ironically the weather is colder, but I get to swim in warmer water than I do during the regular season.
Go over to the George Kittle barn. Doesn't he have a pool over there? You could go over there.
He's got an ice tub. I don't think that he's got a pool. He's got a football field, though. He's got a 40-yard field.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, so
ready for tight on you.
Before we get into what you did, explain to us where the 49ers are financially. What's their situation? Who could restructure potentially? How much money do they have? So what are we working with here?
The 49ers are working with exactly $296.6 million. That's their adjusted salary cap. So the NFL's salary cap is $255.4 million. But remember, the 49ers ran a bunch of restructures around week one before they played Pittsburgh, and they freed up about $40 million of space this past year, and everybody was saying, what's that for? Well, most of it was for carrying over because unused cap space carries over. So 36 of that $40 million was unused, and it carried over from 2023 to 2024. And then you have incentives that counted against the cap last year but were not earned. You get those back as a credit. So they got about $5.7 million back as a credit. So it adds up to $296.6 million, which is actually the largest adjusted cap in the NFL, which to me is remarkable. The 49ers are the most cap room out of, or the most, not most cap room, the most cap to work with out of any team. But there was some good pre-planning, and they got some credits back. And obviously the cap also increased $31 million because of, it's tied to league revenue, and league revenue shot up more than people expected this year. So the cap is bigger than people thought. The 49ers have some nice carryover space, and because of that, they do have some room to make some moves. But they have, like I said, every year's connected. So just like 2023 is connected to 2024, 2025 is going to be connected to 2024 as well. And 2025 is when Brock Purdy will probably get his new contract if things continue at this rate. So you've got to look at it in a big picture and make sure that you're staying sustainable, not just for this year, but for next.
So Monday morning at 9 o'clock our time, the legal tampering period starts, and that's when you really start to go after deals. Before that time, though, the NFL begins to trim, restructure, release players. And that's a lot of money they have to play with. But as you brace forward to Brock and his money and Ayuk coming up as well, as far as restructuring or releasing more between now and the start of the new league year, which is actually, formally 1 week from today at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. And the name is Eric Armstead, and we've talked about it on the show, and you and I have been texting back and forth. Do you see the 49ers either releasing or restructuring Eric Armstead's contract?
I don't see them releasing him because the thing is with guys like Armstead and George Kittle and Deebo Samuel, they've already run multiple restructures with those players. And a restructure basically means taking the base salary, converting it to signing bonus, and then by league rules, the signing bonus counts prorated against the cap. So you could stretch the signing bonus cap hit out like an accordion over the course of the life of a contract. So you pick players who you think are going to be with you for quite some time as productive members of the team, and you restructure them to open up short-term space because you push the money into the future. They've already done that with Armstead to the extent that if they released him, it would save them like $2 or $3 million, but it would rack up something well over $20 million in dead money. So there's not really a lot of efficiency to be found there if you released Eric Armstead because you have already pushed so much of that money into the future. So when you have restructured guys like that, they really have to fall off of a cliff to make sense for you to move off of that contract early. And I don't think Eric obviously has dealt with injuries over the past couple of years, but he's still a really, really important part of this team. And Greg, the way I look at it is these guys are coming off of yet another devastating, heartbreaking Super Bowl loss, but they still have a core of players that obviously is very capable of winning huge games and obviously is right there. That they want to keep that core together. They don't want to get worse this offseason, right? They want to try to fortify what already is an excellent roster with what it takes to get over the hump. And when I hear a lot of these, they should trade this guy, they should cut that guy, I think that directly contradicts the near-term goal of trying to kick the door down and finally win one of these things.
David Lombardi has joined us. He and Matt Barrows do one of the best things in the offseason. They let you be the GM. They have a spreadsheet. Make sure that you check it out. In The Athletic, at Lombardi himself or at Matt Barrows. They've got it up right now, and you can take the spreadsheet and you do your own draft, plug these guys in. You got to stay under the number, even though, as David Lombardi said, they have got all that carryover. They have the $296 million, so you got to play GM, but you do have to stay under the number. Here's one of the most fun things that you did, and I love your draft, by the way. Graham Barton, a guy out of Duke, is who you took first in the first round. Offensive line, you went heavy offensive line. You got Isaac, the kid out of Penn State, so you look at edge, but you went Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's son. You go Ed McCaffrey's son or Christian McCaffrey's brother, Luke. You got him in there. And with your last pick, Frank Gore Jr., so you go heavy family ties in your mock draft. People would love that.
Yeah, and listen, people take mock drafts way too seriously. I find it ridiculous that people come out with like 20 and then get mad at other people's mock draft and be like, no, you should have picked this guy in the fourth round with pick number 126 or whatever. I mean, it's just stupid at some point, right? It's a total crapshoot. So I said, why don't we have some fun with this? And, a lot of people are talking about the legacy options for the 49ers with those three players. So if there were a full-on legacy draft, I thought that's what it would look like. With, for Frank Gore, how cool would it be if they let Frank Gore, who's part of the 49ers organization again now, if they drafted Frank Gore Jr., how cool would it be if Frank Gore, called into your radio show and gave, after they drafted him, and read off his scouting report for his son.
Or announced it at the draft.
Or announced it at the draft. Yeah, either way. Yeah. Or, be the guy in the draft room that called his son, instead of Kyle
hey,
or John. Yeah. I think that'd be really cool. But, these are all distinct possibilities, and everybody would say, well, Frank Gore Jr., 7th-round pick, that's, I think, where he's projected to go. No way that he makes the team. Well, sorry, crazier things have happened. You could look at Brock Purdy, drafted around that time in the 7th round. He did make the team, and he did a whole lot more. I think Luke McCaffrey is projected to go somewhere in the middle, and Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's son, is expected to go a little bit higher than that, third round or so. So, that would be really cool. What's especially neat about these legacy options is that all three of their dads are closely tied with the 49ers right now, right? Jerry's at almost every home game. Ed McCaffrey's probably at every home game. I don't think I saw a game without him this year.
Well. Yeah,
and a few road games as well. And obviously Frank Gore's literally part of the organization right now. So these ties are, they're not just some kind of, he played for the Niners 30 years ago kind of thing. These are, father-son combos where the dad is around very, very often right now.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Let's get to next week and what's going to happen. And before we start buying players from other teams, and I want to get your thoughts on Danielle Hunter in Minnesota, maybe trading for L'Jarius Sneed and signing him away from Kansas City. But you got to figure out what you're going to do with your own. And there's a long list of guys that you and I agree. I want John Feliciano back. You want Chris Conley back. What are you going to do on defense regarding, Kevin Givens and Cleve Furl? You want those guys back, the linebackers as well. But the number one guy, I think, in the offseason, and he's not a starter because he's your backup, is Sam Darnold. And I just know how much the 49ers and Kyle in particular love him. And they got lucky this year. They got fortunate. Brock was predominantly healthy, a couple of stingers here and there, but Sam's services were not needed. Played well against the Rams. His first half was really good. Do you think anybody will bring Sam Darnold onto their roster starting next week like the Niners did, incentivize him to be a starter, have him compete, give him better money? What will it cost for the Niners to match whatever's out there and to bring Sam back as Brock's backup next year?
Yeah, it's a question of reputation rehab and how much of that was accomplished over Sam's 1 year so far with the 49ers. Because, if another team decides, okay, we're going to bring this guy in and we're going to give him a legitimate shot to compete for the QB1 job, then that will be a better contract for Sam Darnold than something that the 49ers would be able to afford, because he's obviously not going to be competing for the QB1 job with San Francisco. So last year, Darnold needed some image repair after the struggles with the New York Jets and then the Carolina Panthers. And I think that some of that definitely happened. I think just being associated with the 49ers, with Brian Griese, who's done a really good job, I think, with all the quarterbacks. That includes Trey Lance. That includes Jimmy Garoppolo. Obviously, Brock Purdy. Just being in that building has helped Sam Darnold's reputation. Now, it's also a matter of timing and opportunity. We'll see what other team might be in a position to offer Sam Darnold that kind of opportunity that the 49ers can't. If that's not out there for Sam at this point, maybe because he didn't get to play that much, because Brock Purdy was mostly healthy throughout the season. Like you said, the 49ers loved having him around, and just because they were relatively healthy at quarterback this year does not downgrade the importance of quarterback depth. This team is still living based off of the scars that it suffered in 2022 when all those quarterbacks got hurt, and they should in no way de-emphasize the importance of QB depth. So it's either going to be Darnold as QB2, I think, if they can bring him back. If they can't, if his reputation has been rehabbed well enough to go get a job somewhere else, that's great for the 49ers, that they can just start a factory, right? They could bring somebody else in that is talented, that might need some reputation rehab, and see if Brian Griese in that quarterback room can work some magic there. I think somebody like Mitch Trubisky might be available. Somebody with good physical upside that would work within the context of the QB2 job, within the context of Kyle Shanahan's system. And, maybe they can turn that quarterback pipeline, that quarterback room, into something like what Chris Kasarik is able to do with a defensive lineman.
I think Zach Wilson or Mac Jones is going to be available. I think New England's going to take a quarterback
those are two good names as well.
I think
they're very good, very good thoughts.
I'm looking at cornerback too, where all their top three corners are going to be free agents in the offseason. Now, look, I think Demo probably is going to get re-signed. I think they're going to re-sign Ward at some point too. But is that a position that they're looking at certainly in the draft, and edge? And you looked at the offensive line. I'm with you on the offensive line on the right side, guard, tackle. But is corner a sneaky place where you're like, man, they got to fortify at that position because Ward, Demo, those guys are free agents in the offseason, or next offseason, I should say.
Yeah, I think also their thinking this year should probably be more geared toward something like what the 49ers had to do in the mid-'90s to overcome Dallas. Like, I know, I get it, sustainability, thinking about the future, not just this next season, but past that. That's all great, and they're going to continue doing that. But if there ever were impetus to think about kicking the door down, just getting that extra oomph in there to get over the hump of Kansas City, this has to be the time to do it, right? Because you've got so many potential outs in some of these big contracts after this 2024 season, and you also have that Brock Purdy potential contract extension looming. Things could start looking a whole lot different after this next season. So I don't want to call it a last dance, because in many ways this might have just been the first dance since it was Brock Purdy's first full season, but there will be a shift. There will be changes. We know this, and the changes probably are going to be coming after this season. So you do in some way have to think about consolidating resources and finding a piece that very specifically can help you beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. That's how the 49ers of the 90s had to think after losing to the Cowboys in 2 straight years. Obviously, they brought in Ken Norton Jr. and Deion Sanders that year. I'm not saying that you have to bring in an A-list corner, but I do think that you should bring in somebody who has the potential to start, or at least help that nickel back dynamic, to where you're not dealing with 2 corners and then a question mark at that third spot with Diamondor Lenore moving into that nickelback position, and then you don't know what's happening outside with Ambry Thomas. I think that could be a piece that specifically really helps the 49ers be better. And I think that the replenishment project at edge rusher and along the defensive line is something you have to think about every single season, especially if you're the 49ers running the wide 9 the way that they do. So, Chase Young is a pending free agent. We've talked all season about the need to bookend Nick Bosa. Chase Young helped that effort. you try to upgrade there? Do you bring Chase back? What's the thought there? You can't just leave that unaddressed because it is so important within the context of what they do defensively.
Yeah, I'm with you, and you and I have talked about Chase Young since before they even got him. I'm not a big fan. There are other people out there that were not franchise tagged, in particular Danielle Hunter with the Vikings coming off a 16.5 sack season, and we saw it in the Monday night game, and that inside move that he had on Colton McKivitz. He's overwhelmingly good. He stops the run. So as far as, going off your own roster and when Monday morning at 9 o'clock rolls around, and we were stunned when they got Javon Hargrave, I think Danielle Hunter could be that guy this year. Can they do that? You talked about them carrying over the $36 million of unused cap space from 2023 to this year, so the number is $296.6 million. David, Matt Barrows did go out and get a D lineman. You did not, as you were looking at it. But how much money do they have to spend there? Is it realistic to think they could be involved in Danielle Hunter and or probably or not both trade for L'Jarius Sneed and give him a contract extension?
Knowing this team, I would think that somebody like Danielle Hunter would be more likely. L'Jarius Sneed would require significant draft capital to be able to acquire. And I know that the draft, we talk about money and we talk about filling out the margins of the team, which is so important with a team that's as top heavy as these 49ers are projected to be. I think you've got to hit on this draft to get some of those glue positions, not just for this season, but for future seasons. And you get them at a cost-controlled price because of the rookie wage scale. So I don't know if you want to get into the mode of giving up draft picks this year, but somebody like Danielle Hunter, you look at him, the defensive line is something that the 49ers have consistently invested in. The bookend position for Bosa is so important. Danielle's still 29 right now, so you can get him for, 3 years, and you'll still get fairly prime years out of him. It's something that I definitely wouldn't be shocked if the 49ers went out and spent on. I think if they do spend, that is a position that they would be willing to spend on because they can get back to having that dominant defensive front. And I think at times this past year when Chase Young was playing well, I remember that Jacksonville game, his debut with the 49ers, he was meeting Bosa at the quarterback. They met at Trevor Lawrence a couple times that game. They even forced a fumble. When that was going and they had that five-man defensive front to open the game and they were stopping the run, it was a lot of fun for San Francisco. And there were some shades of 2019. They just couldn't do it consistently. And I think that do it consistently, you're going to have a talent like a Danielle Hunter on the other side. So if there is going to be spending, if there is going to be a way to capitalize on the rising cap, then it's a splash like that. I think you're exactly right.
Great stuff, David. Really appreciate it. Well done, as always. I get excited this time of year when you guys do that, and you guys never disappoint. Thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks. Have a great day.
You too.